All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ohio State Primetime 6 call-in show. I'm your co-host, Garrison Gaddy.
I'm Ryan Stano.
So, man, let's get
So,
started.
yeah, go ahead. I know a lot's happened since we last talked, so let's go ahead and I know I went on to
Mhm.
do the recruiting show yesterday. Got to catch a little bit about the urban stuff you did, which obviously there was more news about that today. So,
Yeah.
why don't we go ahead and start there? I guess Urban came out with a statement saying that they are not that he is not returning to coaching. He is
hmm
not interested in the rumors that have been surrounding him and the Ohio State coaching job. What did you make of that, Garrison?
I was relieved. I'm happy. No, when I went live the other day, I was gradually getting myself a little bit too excited and thinking, like, what if, just like the what ifs. And then,
Yeah,
I came back down to earth. Reality hit me, and I said, no, 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 stick to your guns. You don't want this to happen. And I've been on that for a while now. Glad he came out and said it. I think that's important for the university that he gets that out. It's perfect. It's good for the program that he gets that out. So, yeah, that's really all to say about that. Yourself?
yeah. This was something that wasn't very surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, all the people that were floating the fact that he might, he should be the coach. He could come back. I never thought that was realistic. And even that Jay Crawford, I guess quote unquote report that came out,
Mm-hmm.
never really bought that. Um, I mean, even if Urban was interested in the job, I never thought that
Yeah.
Ohio State would bring him back. So I wasn't, you know, the statement today didn't really surprise me. I never really
Mm-hmm.
considered him as a serious possibility to take over the job. I know obviously you said you were kind of more fantasizing about it, but I never thought if they do move on from Ryan Day, I never really thought he was going to be a serious contender for that position. That was my thought.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
A lot of questions were like, would he even like? I do think he could adapt to today's game, what's going on, like with NIL and everything. I think that's perfect for him. But just I don't want to. I want to be very consistent because I always say towards the end of his tenure at Ohio State, it wasn't extravagant. Like it was still really good. It was still really good, but it wasn't. We weren't playing for national championships anymore. We were in the talks, but then something would, you know, bite us in the arse, and it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And there was some very disappointing losses in between that time, and yeah,
Yeah. No, I
love you
agree
though,
with.
Urban.
Well, yeah, yeah. No, I mean everything he did, like, in his 7 seasons here, great. Won a national title,
Mhm.
never lost to Michigan, fantastic. But
Yeah,
it was time to. I think it was time for both parties to go ahead and move on. So that wasn't anything surprising to me. Um, and I know that's, in my opinion, that's really all there is to say about it. I mean, he seems
hmm
happy with TV. His gig's perfect for him. He can still be close to college football, still travel to see all these different places, see all these games without having the high stress of having to deal with the game plan every week, going out on the road and recruiting. So
hmm
I think he's going to stay put where he's at, and he seems happy doing his podcast, doing the big noon kickoff show. He seems to enjoy all of that. So I don't he would never um I don't think he would ever give that gig up again.
yeah. So, yesterday I'm sorry, on National Signing Day, you went on live.
Yeah,
What
yesterday, yeah.
yeah, I got saw your so I watched it today actually this morning. I was kind of I wasn't snowed in, but the roads were too icy to even get to work.
Mhm.
Uh, what's your reaction to this 2020 five class, five class?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 2025 class. So, I mean, it's a top 5 class. As I mentioned on the stream, it's good. It's very good. You
hmm
know, I there are some high level guys in there, and even since I went live yesterday, they added one more. Jocko Carter did end up signing.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was
he
huge.
Yeah, which he had announced that he was going to sign today, but
hmm
whenever kids don't do it on early signing day, people get a little squeamish about it. So, having him come
Right.
in was good, but the class in general, it's got a lot of guys who I think can contribute in some shape or form. There's only a few guys though that I think are going to be elite talents. I think Devin Sanchez, he's probably my favorite guy in the entire class. As I mentioned yesterday, he's a guy
Hmm.
that can really shut down one side of the field. He's the number one corner in the country. He is someone that can play man, zone, uses his hands well. He actually turns and looks for the ball, which is something Ohio State corners have issues with right now. Um,
Yes.
but he's a guy that I think they really can build around in the secondary. And with Denzel Burke leaving, Jordan Hancock leaving, possibly Iganosin also leaving, they're going to need guys to step up and fill those empty spots. And Sanchez is someone who I think can possibly contribute day one. And the other guy who I think is
Hmm.
elite is obviously, the top guy in the billing of this class, Tavian St. Clair. Um,
Yeah.
and I know you are also kind of on that train where he might be able to start next year, right away at the
Hmm.
quarterback spot, but we'll see. With him, Julian Sand, Aaron Nolan, it's going to be a three-way battle, I think. I don't, as I said on the stream, I don't think Devin Brown's really going to play much of a factor. Lincoln Keenanholz certainly won't. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a three-horse race there. And I do think St. Clair, will start here at some point. But it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out, especially if Day ends up by the wayside. What are your thoughts on the class?
I'm happy with it. I think it's a really good class. I think there's a lot of position groups that depth wise we needed, like running back. Surprisingly, we aren't that deep at running back going into next year. So
Yeah.
bringing in Bo
Yep.
Jackson, bringing in Turbo, that bringing him Rogers wasn't a surprise because we all kind of saw it coming for the last month now. But just to have it, have him signed, have it secured, and knowing that he's going to be in Scarlet and Gray is really good to see. Um,
Yep.
I
Yeah. I mean, he was.
really love this running back class.
Yeah, and you're right. The running back class was something they were going to need to make sure that they this class of running backs, they really needed to build depth at
Mm,
that position because you're right. There's not a whole lot of guys behind Quinshawn Judkins coming into next year. I mean, James Peoples got a few snaps, he got a
yep.
few carries, which is good. He's someone who I thought looked good in the limited amount of reps he got,
Hmm.
in games this year. But behind him, you got St. Williams Dixon. You don't really have a whole lot other than that. So,
Yep.
you wanted to make sure that you built up that depth, and they did that. They certainly did that. Now, there's some other parts of the recruiting class that I was hoping they would build a little bit more depth with. Um, Corner is one of those. I just raved about Sanchez, but also at the same time, you lose Naima Ford,
Hmm.
number 2 recruit in the country, which would have been nice to land, another 5-star guy. And the only other guy they got was a 3-star kid. So, corner would have been nice to build depth at.
He's a big
Offensive
kid. What, he's
line,
like it's like 6'3", 6'4".
who? A Ford or Sanchez?
No. Shoot, I don't want to mess up his name here. Um, what was his name? Yeah, Jordan Woods. Jordan Woods.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
Out
yeah.
of
Woods,
Georgia.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a big dude. He's a big dude.
Hmm.
But
But yeah, it could
again,
have been better.
yeah, yeah. And it's top 5. The class started out for a lot of the year as number 1 in the country. So,
Hmm.
they kind of fell off a little bit with their recruiting at the end of you know, at the end of this class. So it, you know, they a top 5 class is nothing to scoff at. You should always be happy
Yeah.
with it. But I would have liked to seen a little bit of a better finish. And obviously, they ended up not flipping David Sanders Jr., that offensive lineman,
Hmm.
number 1, tackle in the country. That would have been nice to see. But
Yeah.
he just
Looks like
wanted
that came
another
down
day
to a
to kind
bidding
of
war. Seems like.
and he wanted another day to kind of bask in the
Hmm.
glory of Tennessee. So it is what it is.
So one of my favorite commits in this class, not the highest rate recruit, but I think he has um, a lot of tools coming into college that a lot of guys don't have out of high school. That's Desi Jones,
Mm.
Desi Jones. I'm not sure
Yeah, Desi Jones.
Desi
Yeah.
Jones. Um, and I hope he's recovering well right now after his injury this season.
Yeah.
But that kid, man, I remember when he first signed, or not signed, but he first committed, and I went through
Yeah.
his tape or his highlight film, and man, I mean, his cuts are immaculate, great route running, creates separation, really good speed at the position. I think that he's one of those guys that his upside is very high. And though he's down in the rankings, I think somewhere between the 40s and 50s at wide receiver in the composite, he has all I think he has all the tools um to be as good as let's say like a Quincy Porter. You know,
Yeah.
high really guy, but I think Desi Jones has that ability in him.
Yeah. And you're going to get a solid recruiting class with Brian
Hmm.
Hartline as receivers coach.
Yeah.
He's the one guy on staff I trust implicitly with whoever he evaluates and whoever he brings in. So even a guy like Desi Jones, who doesn't necessarily have the highest star ranking, there's definite hope that he can coach him up and bring him to be an elite receiver at some point. But that kind of brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about tonight is we had some portal news in the last few days.
Yeah.
Some transfer guys came out. We had two receivers actually enter the portal. Jaden Ballard and Kojo Antwi both decided
Hmm.
to leave for the portal, go for greener pastures. And, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Garrison, but for me, quite frankly, I was surprised Ballard even stayed for this season. I didn't really see I was
Yeah.
shocked to see him come back because I didn't see there was going to be a whole lot of snaps for on the field, and shockingly, there weren't. So, and Kojo was a guy I had circled to leave at this time too. What do you think about those guys heading out?
Same thing. Surprised Ballard stayed this long. Um, people forget he was a highly touted receiver coming out of high school. Also, um, he's a guy with elite speed. For some odd reason, it just didn't work out. Didn't
Yep.
really crack the rotation in his time at Ohio State. Over the last taking away this year, it was understandable why he didn't crack um the
Well, I think
depth
part of
chart.
it is the guys he had around him in the receiver room.
No, and that's
I
and that's
mean,
exactly what it is.
yeah, I mean Marvin
Exactly
Harrison
what it is.
Jr., Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. It's hard to get on the field when those
Yeah,
guys are also
yeah,
in the room.
and it's funny coming out of high school, he was way higher than Marvin, but
Yeah, yeah,
but
which is
I
ludicrous.
yeah, it really is. But I was hoping that he would be someone that would turn into what kind of like what like not to the same extent with these guys who are being the same player they were, but like a Devin Smith, Tegan Jr., guys that you can trust to just get downfield, say go run a streak, and you throw it up there. So he didn't turn out to that, but he's got the athletic ability, he's got some talent. So I hope he wherever he goes, he does well.
Yep.
Antwi even more so. I mean, you're probably what the sixth, seventh receiver on the
Yeah.
team, and you know what's gonna happen. We're gonna have some more guys come in. Also, it's tough, and especially because right now for those two guys, I think we all know what next year's lineup is going to be. A receiver, it's going to be J.J. Smith, it's going to be Carnell Tate, and it's going to be Brandon Ennis. That's what it's going to be.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and honestly, I
yeah.
don't begrudge anyone in that receiver group who transfers out.
Hmm.
That's the most competitive room on the team, quite frankly, because every year they're bringing in 4 or 5-star kids. So the guys who can't quite make it on the field, I don't begrudge them for looking elsewhere because they know that once signing day rolls around, there's going to be 3 or 4 more kids coming up to take their spots. So, you know, I think Jaden could possibly. I mean, I think Jaden could probably play at a Mountain West or Mac school, maybe even AAC type of
Hmm.
school. He's got talent. I think he just needs to kind of put it all together. And maybe in a less crowded receiver room, I think he can make an impact. Antwi, we didn't see enough of him, so I
Yeah.
don't really know what to expect from him, going
Yep.
elsewhere. I mean, probably a max school would be, Sunbelt, some lower level school would probably be best for him. But I mean, we've seen also necessarily the grass hasn't always been greener for some of these receivers that has transferred out. And Caleb Brown at Iowa hasn't really done a whole lot. Julian Fleming at
He's
Penn
transferring
State was
again.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
Julian Fleming at Penn State was a non-factor, this season.
Yeah.
So, uh, it's just kind of tough when you get in here. But that also credit to Brian Hartline for bringing in a lot of kids who are really good,
Hmm.
and that's part of the pitch when you come to Ohio State as a receiver. You're going to go
Yeah.
against the best. Iron sharpens iron. Whoever is going to be the best on the field, they're going to play. And I think you need that at every position.
Definitely. Definitely. So, did you get a chance to see Ryan Day's press conference?
I did, and there were a lot of things going on in that conference.
Give me your thoughts.
This is something I wrote about earlier today.
You say you wrote about it?
I wrote about it yesterday and also
Can
today.
you drop that link here in the comments
Yeah.
for everybody?
Well, I would if I was able to
Yeah.
do the comments. Having some
Oh yeah.
technical issues here on my
Oh yeah.
end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'll find it.
oh, here we go. I guess I can join the chat and put it in there. We'll see if that'll allow me. But my initial thought was that it was really, really odd. He had some questions about the game that he, didn't really give answers to. He really was talking about, really one of the biggest questions that got my attention was when they asked him if he needed to have some sort of sales pitch to not only the recruits coming in, but the guys on the team right now. Hey, I forget who asked the question, but it was, do you feel like you need a sales pitch to, show that you can still run this team? And he goes, no, I don't think I need a sales pitch. I think it was a tough game. We'll move on and we'll try to put it past us, even though it stinks. Like, dude, you have a chance to actually talk yourself up, maybe make the fan base feel a little bit better about you, make the media feel a little bit about you, and you just kind of opt out. I thought that was strange. And the other thing that caught my eye, and I'm sure you noticed this too, was when they asked about the play calling specifically with Chip.
Yes.
And he talked about, someone asked him, hey, did you go in and call some of these plays? And what he basically said was, yeah, I always click over on offense and defense here on the headset. But, I'm just going to leave it at that. I kind of let these guys do their thing. So he basically stopped short of giving a full answer, but you can kind of tell, I didn't really make the play calls, but it's still, I should have done something about the play calls. So those are the two main things that stuck out to me. What about you?
That was the main thing that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
For two reasons. If I'm being just completely honest, one is just me being selfish and just self-congratulating, saying that's what I've been saying for the last few days. That I thought that was all Chip. I just really thought that was all Chip. And then saying that where Ryan Day fell short that day was doing exactly what he just talked about, not taking over the play calling and not having some more say so, and telling Chip Kelly, hey, you're my subordinate. Listen to what I'm saying to you. This is what we're gonna do. Stop running tight sets. Stop running the ball up the middle. It's stupid. So but on the other side, but to follow that up, I think that a lot of people are going to be upset today because we all know that was the case, and that's what he should have been doing the whole time, especially when the game started to, I guess, slip away near I would say late in the third quarter. You could tell it was gonna get a little, it was gonna get a little tight, man. It was gonna get a little tight and pressurized, and we could tell that we were losing moments. Same thing as the Oregon game. Actually, we were losing moments to where we could have put a stamp on the game.
Yeah.
I'm happy that he took he that's what you do as the head coach. You go out there and you say, yeah, that's where I fell short. But now, again, we have 3 weeks now until the playoffs. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say about this is, at least he went out there and said, look, ultimately the buck stops with me. And he didn't really try to explain away why they didn't throw the ball to the outside as much. What he did say one of those, he was like, well, I think this was actually Will. How I think Will had the second most throws of the season. In this game, he's basically trying to say, yeah, I mean, we didn't just not throw the ball. Okay, yeah, but you didn't throw it effectively to areas of the field where we had the advantage. You didn't go to
Mm-hmm.
the outside to target Jeremiah a whole lot. You didn't try to get Mecca Ibuka, matched up with their third corner. Knowing that he can beat him with a quick slant or even a wide receiver screen where you can block outside. It was a frustrating game plan, and Day he finally just kind of took it. He knows that no matter what he says at this point, it doesn't. It's falling on deaf ears.
Yep.
There's nothing more to say. It's just kind of you gotta line up and try not to do the same thing in a playoff game because if you do, you're gonna get beat again.
No, that's for sure. Also, he talked about the offensive line, and he said that that there was a time in the game they thought about switching it up.
Yeah,
Now, part of me says you don't do that because it could look worse, and that those guys really have no time. They have no time together. The other part
yeah.
of me says, yeah, you probably should have done it, but I mean, over the next few weeks, he said they're gonna reevaluate the offensive line, see where they should go with it, and I think they should.
I
Starting with
don't.
Tegra. Starting
Yeah,
with Tegra.
yeah, yeah.
I think
I
the
yeah.
guard position is. Ugh.
I don't necessarily begrudge him for not wanting to change up in the middle of the game because
Mhm.
one of the things that they would have had to have done is put Josh Padilla in there at center right away in order to make
Right.
the changes you want to make a change. And I don't think you can change the center position in the middle of the game. That's the one position on the field that I don't think you can do it, especially in the game with someone who has not taken really a snap.
Mhm.
So I don't really fault him for that. Now, what they better be doing is, like you said, working on that this week and the next few weeks in practice before the bowl game. So if they need to make a change, they decide that Padilla needs to be in there at center, so Hinsman can move over to guard and Tegra can just go away. That's
Mhm.
fine. But those offensive line changes, they need to be made during bowl practice because that's when you get a lot of reps. Even for the, first CFP game, that's technically, I don't even know if it's technically a bowl game, I guess, because, it would be a home game, but regardless,
Right.
that's something that needs to be taken care of before the game. And they need to, again, this goes back to Justin Fry. The fact that they don't have the depth on the offensive line that they think can even make a change mid-game, that speaks volumes about the recruiting and the coaching that he's done.
What would you grade Justin Fry this year?
Um, I would give him a B solely because, and that's better than what I thought I was going to give him coming into the season. Part of that is because of the injuries are tough. Look, when you lose your starting left tackle for the year, you lose your center
Mhm.
for the year. Those are your two most important offensive linemen. And it's really, really hard to replace those guys.
Yeah.
And I actually thought the offensive line played pretty decent against Penn State and IU after the McLaughlin injuries. Obviously, they were awful against Nebraska. And then that's when they, made that change with Hinsman at guard. So I give them a B just for that. But
Mhm.
everything else, again, they should have been starting Hinsman from the beginning. They should have had more depth along the offensive line that would have put them in a better situation for these injuries. Injuries happen, it's part of the sport, especially now that this is such a long season. Like if
Mhm.
Ohio State ends up playing for the national championship, they're going to play 17 games this season. And if you're going to play that many games, you need to have depth built in.
Yeah.
So I give him all possible negative demerits for not having depth because of his bad recruiting and
Yeah.
him not being able to actually develop a solid offensive lineman. What about you?
I would give him before Saturday. I would give him a B plus. I'm at maybe a C plus now, B minus. Um, for all the reasons you brought up, well, specifically the reason of depth. It is his job to make sure that we have depth at the offensive line position. Uh, I don't think that we hit the portal hard enough for that, and we should have. I think it was a little bit it was arrogant to not do that. Thinking that we were just thinking that we would have been okay in case anybody went down. Uh, Simmons and McLaughlin going down was bad, but I think this would have been bad whether anybody went down. Um,
Yeah,
so that
but
that's
those are
mostly
the
where
two
I
guys
agree
you
now.
obviously couldn't afford to lose. Yeah, you're
Exactly.
right.
And so that's why I give him a C plus B minus somewhere in that area. I just and because it's now affecting the longevity of this season. Before all season I've been saying that when you have a season like this, it's very important that you get guys off the field so that they are there later in the season.
Yeah,
Clearly that didn't happen. And don't get me wrong, like when you're talking about um the injuries that these guys have had, those are kind of you can have those as non-contact injuries. Like those things can happen at any time in the game. So they're kind of freak injuries, but still it is your job to have depth in that position group. And injuries happen, and now at first it was okay until McLaughlin went down. That's
yeah,
when things kind of unraveled.
yep. I agree. This is the college show, so if anybody's got stuff you want to talk about, put it into the comments section. Follow the link to go ahead and call in. We'll talk about anything as you want to talk about. This is kind of your guys' show, so we want to hear from you as well.
Mhm.
But while we get some comments in here, Garrison, I want to talk to you about if you're feeling any better following the loss on Saturday with how this team could possibly do in the playoff. Because coming out of the game on Saturday,
Mhm.
based on what we saw, I was pretty negative. I was pretty down in the dumps as far as what I thought Ohio State could possibly do moving forward. I'm
Mhm.
not sure if my mind has changed a ton in that regard yet, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Um, I'm not negative. I wouldn't, and simply because of football reasons, like we're talking about the offensive line, I wouldn't say I'm positive, but I'm very hmm, I'm anxious to see what happens, like what we see out of these next 3 weeks, or I guess 2 weeks now, since the week is almost over.
Yeah.
For championship week, we have 2 weeks after that, so I'm really anxious to see what it looks like. What differences have been made. The defense is fine. The defense is going to be the defense. Everyone gives up something here and there, and when we play a team like Texas, or if we play a team like heck, Georgia, or anyone that has really good receiving cores. I want to say Georgia has a really good receiving core, but they have guys like Arian Smith who are really fast and can get downfield.
Yeah, he
Or
drops a
like
lot of
or
passes though, which is
he
pretty good.
yes he does. Yes he does. Yeah, yeah. But or then like you have Oregon. So it'd be really interesting to see how we would look. But I have trust in the defense. What's very important is what does this offense look like coming out of there? They said
Yeah.
that there was a really good. They had a team meeting led by Caleb Downs. Then the coaches came into it and they said that it all ended well. Okay, well now that has to translate onto the football field, and if the offense can't get going, the playoffs is not a time to have slow starts. Now,
Yeah.
what I'm really interested in seeing is that like in the NFL game, when you get to the playoffs, the game slows down. It slows down. You have less possessions, and it's because everyone has tape on you now. There's really nothing that you have not shown that everyone can't see at this point.
Yeah, you can't really go and hide.
Exactly. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what the offense looks like in that aspect, and if our offensive line was healthy, I would say we could win almost every game like that when it comes to possession for possession, slowed down game. But right now, it's a toss up because of the offensive line. So
Yeah. It's kind of weird because, like I just said, after the game, I was pretty bearish on Ohio State's chances in the college football playoff. But then I came to a bit of a realization.
oh, let's hear
it. And this is a realization I think you might like.
it. Okay.
So Ryan Day sucks against Michigan. That's just a fact. That's not even an opinion. That's just a verifiable fact at this point.
There's a lot of data on it.
But guess who's not going to be in the playoff? Michigan. So the Michigan game, it's clearly in his head. It's clearly deep in his ear hole. It's a worm he can't get out. It's deep in his soul that he just can't win that game. Right. Now, he's also had some other problems in big games, but what hasn't been the problem in those big games has been the offense. Even the games this year, the Oregon game that they lost, Ohio State still scored in the 30s. Ohio State, after starting down 10-0 against Penn State, they rallied back to score 20 points. The IU game, they scored 38 points. The offense is still explosive. The offensive line is definitely a concern. I am 100% with you there. I'm not thrilled at the offensive line situation they have right now, especially when we talked about the fact that they might reshuffle it again. But at the same time, when you're in the playoff, all bets are off, which means Jay also won't be, tucking his tail between his legs, calling plays scared. Neither will Chip. These are guys that when there's nothing to lose, they go balls to the wall. That's what happened against Georgia in 2022. That loss was not on the offense. That was more on the defensive side. Ohio State's defense is a lot better this year. Post that Oregon game, after Jim and Larry had their little kumbaya moment or yell session, whatever it was, the defense has been significantly better. I, just like you, I trust the defense in a big game. And if Chip and Day call a first-round playoff game this season as they have in the past, I actually have some hope that they're going to be able to put up some points. Now, whether or not it's going to be enough against certain teams, we'll see. I do expect them to win a first-round game if it's against a team like Tennessee or even Alabama. Jalen Milroe is not good, and going against our defense coming up here to play, in the North, I don't see how that would end well for them necessarily.
It's like 19 degrees. It's 19 degrees over there today, isn't it?
It's tomorrow wind chills of -4. So, imagine someone coming over here and trying to play in the shoe, assuming that they have the game in the shoe. Gene Smith always talked about wanting to put it, in Indy, but I don't see that happening. If Ross Bjork does that, there will be riots on campus, and I'll be one of those guys. So, I'm a little bit more optimistic than I was to start the week, but, I no longer think that this is an elite team that will win the national championship, and would win a rematch against Oregon for sure.
Well, I'm happy. I'm happy you feel that way. I'm happy that your spirits are lifted.
My spirits are lifted, but they're still not with Ryan Day. I am still. No. Let's be clear about that.
Okay. All right. I'm clear. I'm clear on that. But no, you know how I feel. I understand how devastating that loss is. I am a Buckeye through and through. It's devastating that loss was on Saturday. But I'm still gonna look around the college landscape, specifically around the top 12, and ask myself, which one of these teams scare me? And it's not to say that Ohio State should scare anyone else in the top 12, but I think every single one of those teams Ohio State can beat. And I think even with the offensive line, on Ohio State's best day, I still think they are better than everyone else on their best day.
The problem is they don't play their best day.
Exactly. That's the problem. This team, they have a propensity to play down to the team like competition. Take it. I don't know why it slipped me. That word.
You're good.
You're right. If you look at teams like, dude, even 2022, as much as many big plays as that defense gave up, you go watch the Michigan State. There were games where they would put their foot on people's throats.
Sure.
There were a lot of games like that, and
To illustrate
specifically
your
because
point, you can even go back to earlier this year. I mean, Marshall, they farted around with Marshall,
yeah,
in the first half.
exactly.
And then all of a sudden they put the pedal to the metal and blew them out. So, yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
They played a little bit of competition.
No, and it's it's aggravating to watch. At the same time, when they've had big matchups this season, and they've had 3 of those. One of them they came up short, lost by 1 on the road at night in Oregon. The
Yep.
other 2, it took a half, but they dominated them. They
Yep.
dominated Penn State. They dominated Indiana. And so going into these playoffs, and take minus last year because the game against Missouri, man, we're playing without guys, we're playing without Marv. Devin Brown gets
It
hurt.
still shouldn't have been that bad.
Dude, I think when you're in a situation like that where the offensive line is, I think we shuffled the offensive line that game. Coming into that game, we were missing Marv, who was our offensive scheme, and then we had to play a true freshman Lincoln Keenholz.
Yeah.
And the defense played good that game, and they gave up. They had that team scoreless into the fourth
Yeah,
quarter.
gave him 10 points.
But
Now,
I've
yeah,
always
I mean,
loved Ryan Day in a dome. I've always loved Ryan Day in a dome. And then I also
well,
think
guess what?
about
First round's not going to be in a dome. It's
well,
going to be at the
that's
shoe.
okay, and that's okay. I'll take that, knowing that we're probably gonna have an SEC team coming up there. And then also, I had some Tennessee fans say, "Oh man, well, it gets like cold here. It gets like in the 40s, 45." I'm like, dude, it's a little, it's a little
I
bit
mean,
different.
Tennessee would be the SEC team that would stand the best chance as far as dealing with the cold weather. But if you get Georgia or Alabama up here, no way.
Oh
I
no,
mean,
they
they're going
can't.
to be freaking out.
It'll be tough. But what I also like is that Chip Kelly, Jim Knowles, and Ryan Day all have something to prove in this playoff. Ryan Day, yes, he's won a playoff game before, but it's his lone win against Clemson. He's looking to right the wrongs of last week and the last past seasons and get to the national championship, win some playoff games. You have Jim Knowles, who last time we saw him in a playoff game, his defense was getting torched. And that's just what
Yeah.
happened. In that game against Georgia, plenty of times we had them at 3rd and long, plenty of times. And then next thing you know, the gates they're open, and we give up long touchdowns. Guys are falling down on their butts. So there's that. And then you have Chip Kelly, who right now after last week, he's facing some criticism. He is, and so it's gonna be really interesting to see how these guys respond.
Yeah. And, you know, uh, I want to move on here. Well, I want to have a devil's advocate point here in a second, but, you know, you guys comment. We want to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So if you want to,
Mhm.
anything specific you guys want to hear us talk about, feel free to drop something in there in the chat. But
Yeah,
you know how I just said,
we're regurgitating things we already.
yeah. Well, I kind of want to go
Yeah.
with devil's advocate here because you
Okay.
know how I just said I was positive, Ryan. Not that long ago about the
Mhm.
playoff. Now there's also part of me that wants to take it the exact opposite direction
Okay.
because you can also pick holes in all of the big games that Ryan Day has coached in this year.
Mhm.
Let's start with the Penn State game.
Okay.
He's playing against Penn State, which is coached by James Franklin, who is an all-time also pants shitter. I mean,
Mhm.
both of those guys, they can't win big games. And James Franklin is somehow he is what he aspires to be Ryan Day. He aspires to lose big games in the playoff. He's like 1 in
Mhm.
16 against the top 5 in his career. And the one win was
I think
against
he's only been favored in 2 of those though. That's
but
a
okay,
Yeah,
still,
but
but
he should still win more. He should still win more.
he's a guy again. He can't win big games. Ryan Day can't win big games.
Mhm.
Someone had to win a big game out of that. So that's what I take out about that. The Indiana game, top 5 game. Things were a little tight in that first half until IU made a fatal mistake of screwing up that punt. They had the
Mhm.
botched snap. All of a sudden, it's 14-7, and they could not recover from that. They allowed a punt return for a touchdown. They had another special teams blunder in that game. They really kind of melted down on their own. I wouldn't say it was anything that Ohio State necessarily did to kind of
You don't
precipitate
think
that meltdown. And then
you
once
don't
those
think we
special
did
teams
anything on
mistakes,
defense? You don't think our defense
the defense played well, but my point is, once those special teams mistakes kind of happened, IU kind of crumbled. They
Mhm.
crumbled. They knew they had no chance to come back in that environment. And Ohio State's offense also knew they didn't really have to do much because they got the ball, after that punt, that botched snap, they got the ball inside the 5, it's easy score. The punt return, that wasn't scored by the offense. All of a sudden it's 21-7. Oh, we don't even really have to score any more points. We can just kind of cruise our way to victory here at this point. So there was no stress under them in that game. There will be stress in a playoff game. I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, if it's Indiana again. I don't care. There's going to be more stress in a first-round playoff game because Ryan Day knows he has no wiggle room. If they lose a first-round game, he gone. And there's not a defender out there that can keep him from having that happen, especially another home game. If it's a Southern team that comes up here that doesn't play in the weather and they get beat, even if they don't get boat raced and they still get beat, I think it's cause enough to get them out of there now. So I am extremely worried about some butt puckering in that situation.
It may be cause, but it's not going to happen. It may be cause. I don't know.
You said that about the Michigan game.
No, I did. But I didn't know that our kicker was gonna boot it to his girlfriend in the stands.
That's still another concern. But Jaden Field is a major concern going to.
Anything that's 5 yards or less in like from the 35 in, I don't want him kicking.
Oh yeah,
go for it.
It's got to be under 30 yards for him to be able to kick that thing. It's got to be like 3rd and 10 in that, or 4th and 10 in that situation. Exactly. Anything over 30, I'm out on him.
Well, hell, last time you guys went for it on 4th and 10, you got it. Why not? I don't trust I don't trust our kicking right now.
Nor should you.
Yeah, but
So all those negative points that I just brought up?
No,
again. That's the devil side of me. I believe more of the angel side. I mean, what do you think?
No, I think that. Well, when we talk about the like beating Penn State, the Indiana game, I get that. I mean, eventually, man, you gotta look at your jersey and remember who you are, and that's what Indiana did. When it comes to Penn State, when people say, "Oh, well, it's Ryan Day and it's James Franklin, someone's got to win the game," I don't like that because at the end of the day, it's still a big game. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a big game. And I mean, I think Ryan Day's at 500 in top 10 games. So I think we all focus on the playoff games and of course the Michigan games in the last 3 years, and I guess this year because it's a big game still because it's the game. But I mean, he wins big games. It's just not at the right time, I guess is the best way to say it, or at the times when it's most pressurized. But at the same time, I do somewhat agree with your take on that and like the negative side of it. It's yin and yang, and yeah, we can look at the bright side of it, but there's still the other side. And those are games that could have gone left. We were down 10-0 real quick against Penn State. It could have gone left very quick. Now, me being positive and like a little bit more positive in this, well, do we give him credit for not letting it happen? Do we give him credit for not letting it go left? I mean, like, it's like I said, about like when it comes to like the game playing for the offense and the defense.
Yeah,
we can give him we can criticize him and critique him for the negative, but then there's other things like that. Like that game could have gone 25-16 or 25-7. That didn't happen though.
I mean, I don't know. Look, here's where I'm at with Day in general. If he'll get credit for winning a first round home game from some people, and other people will say you were at home, probably playing against, like I said, most likely a Southern team will come up. Fair. That's also fair comment here in the section, Doreen. You're right. But that's what the narrative will be. You should have won that game against a Southern team coming up here to play in the sub-freezing weather. You're at home. You've got no reason to lose that game. And then depending on where we're slotted, so if let's say, for the sake of argument, Oregon beats Penn State, which I expect to happen. I can't believe the line's only 3.5. I think Oregon's much better. But if that were to happen, Penn State is going to slide behind Ohio State because Ohio State's got the head-to-head. So Ohio State, I could see them moving up to the 6th seed because Texas, beats Georgia. Georgia's all of a sudden a 3-loss team. They're going to slide down, and then Ohio State will move up to 6. In that scenario, they're going to play the 11th seed. Again, they're going to host. And then that keeps them out of that 7-8 matchup where they don't have to play Oregon at a neutral site. Oregon is, I think, the best team in the country. They're undefeated. They've played great all year, both offensively and defensively. They had they had a couple early games where they weren't playing so well against Boise State and against Idaho. But, other than that, they've been lights out. And I don't want to see them unless it's in the national championship game. So if they find themselves in that 6th slot where they would play an 11th seed, which could possibly be, an Alabama or an SMU if they were to lose to Clemson, and I would love to face SMU at home here. Trust me, I think that would be a boat race. But that also puts them into a slot where they would have to take on, either a team that isn't Oregon until it's the national championship. Right now, the way it's slotted, with them being the 6 and the 11, they would end up facing the ACC champion more than likely. So Clemson, and they've already beaten Clemson at a neutral site. Obviously it's 2020, different teams, but Ohio State isn't scared of Clemson like other teams used to be. Yeah. So I could possibly see them winning that game. I think that's probably their best path to getting to the national championship, and that could possibly save Day's job. But if they end up being, the 7 seed or the 8 seed, I think they're in trouble because then they got to play Texas or Oregon, up there at a neutral site. Unfortunately, they're not going to be the 5 seed. Obviously, Boise State would have been the easy team to take on in that neutral site game, and they lost their shot at a 1 seed losing to the game. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the seeding there, but that's my talking through their best path to making the national championship.
Well, I'm a competitor. I don't want the easiest route. I want to make sure there's nothing that people can look back on and say, "Oh, Ohio State won the national." And listen, a national championship is a national championship, no matter how you get it.
Yeah,
but
because you're gonna play a good team in that final game if you get there anyway.
Yeah, more than likely. Say if somehow we faced Indiana in the national championship, I don't know if I would call that a really. I think we'll curb stomp them. But I want to. What do you, Doreen right here? Would you rather play Tennessee or Alabama?
I would prefer. Okay, if I'm here's a devil and angel again. If I want to try to win the national championship, I want Tennessee because they'll have a true freshman quarterback coming into a loud environment up here in the north, who has played well at times, but also in the games they've lost, he's looked really bad. And some of those were in hostile environments. So I don't know if Nico is someone that's going to be able to deal with Ohio State's defense specifically. Also, I think Ohio State's better than any defense he's faced so far this season. And I like their chances of winning that game because offensively, I think they can do just enough in a game like that to, beat Tennessee, maybe even by double digits. By 10, they get to score late to kind of make it 10.
Right.
If I want Ryan Day fired as soon as possible, give me Bama because Bama's a much worse team. And if Bama beats Ohio State at Ohio State after they've got a couple of really, really bad losses. That 24-3 loss a couple weeks ago to Oklahoma, that's a bad loss. If you lose to that team, a 3-loss SEC team on your home turf, you deserve to get left on Woody Hayes Drive and, hop on the next bus out of town, buddy. So
I don't know how that happened to them, dude. I'm still amazed by how Alabama got beat in that game.
Yeah. And Jalen Milroe's not good, and if he tears up that defense, then Day deserves to get kicked out of town. What are your thoughts? Which would you rather have?
Tennessee. In my lifetime, I've never seen them play Tennessee. Just being a huge fan. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Tennessee program. Uh, I think they have the best fight song in college football. Love the colors. Love Neyland Stadium. Dude. I love everything about Tennessee. I love
Okay.
that bright
Not a
orange.
take I expected to hear.
Yeah, I do. I love it. Dude. I love the state too. It's a great state. But I'm looking at it here. I guess if I want to move, have an easier path, I want Alabama. Jalen Milroe is bad. He's bad.
Alabama is the worst team. That's for sure. Yes.
Yeah,
Jalen Milroe is ass.
I think our defense would just tear him up throughout the whole game. It would probably be belt the ass if I'm being completely honest with you, like a controlled butt whooping through that game.
That would be the hope.
Yeah, the hope. Tennessee, that game intrigue. I think that's a fun watch. Like last week, no matter who won that game, I think we could all come out saying that was a very ugly game to watch. It wasn't aesthetic at all. Like it was probably one of the worst.
No, it's not aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, it was probably one of the worst Ohio State football games I've ever watched in my life. It's definitely top 5, easily top 5, top 3. So I'm looking here. I mean, they did beat Oklahoma when they were ranked 15th, but we all know that wasn't the win that it was early in the season. Florida took them to overtime. You had the 24-17 win against Alabama. Got stomped by Georgia, and then came on top at Vanderbilt 36-23 last week. I think that game will be fun because we're talking about they have advantages. Their defense is really good. Our defense is really good, but their D line is their stronghold. And going against our offensive line, that would be very tough for them. But I think we have the athletes on the outside that are better than theirs on defense. But it would be a really fun it would be like last week, but it looked like better football.
The reason why I said Tennessee, if I want Ohio State to win, and it's an easier path, even though Alabama is the worst team, is part of the fact, that we talked about earlier. Ohio State plays the level of their competition. Yeah. Tennessee's losses aren't bad. They're not. I mean, the results in those games were bad, but they at least lost to halfway decent teams. So, Bama, we just talked about how their terrible loss was to Oklahoma. I'm afraid Ohio State would play down to, if Alabama comes in and plays bad, all of a sudden Ohio State somehow plays bad. I'm worried about them playing down to the level of their competition. And if Tennessee comes up here, raring to go, good defense, like you said, I think maybe that gets a little bit more of attention from this team. Okay. And they play, better to start the game. I don't know. That's just my thought. And also, I don't think Tennessee can actually beat a good team. That's the other thing. So there's that.
Yeah, and I think that based on today's rankings, if we were to play today, like if everything was go out, we would have Oregon the next round.
Yeah,
it would be Oregon next round. So it's
which again, if you want to avoid, well, I guess you could avoid Oregon either way because Penn State would be the one. Well, they'd probably be the 2 seed, but Oregon would drop down to the 5 seed. Then you all of a sudden start to worry about where Ohio State's seated and if they're going to host a first round game. Because worst case scenario, let's go absolute worst case scenario with this. Let's say Penn State beats Oregon. Let's say Georgia beats Texas. All of a sudden, you've got an argument for Texas and Ohio State for that last home field playoff spot because Penn State's got the automatic bye. Oregon's going to be the 5 seed. Notre Dame's going to be the 6 seed. And then it's going to be, does Texas get that last, do they get the 7 seed? Does Ohio State then stick there at the 8? Or is there a possibility they slide down to the 9? Do they still want to give SMU a home playoff game if they lose to Clemson somehow? I would tend not to think so. I would tend Ohio State's got a home playoff game locked in, whether it's the 6 through 8 seed at some point. But, you'd still like to see Oregon win that game. Texas probably win that game just to avoid any sort of possible mess that could happen with that.
Yeah. And I also think we're playing at home would be to our advantage it gives those seniors another chance at winning at home and finishing off a win at home.
Yeah.
I think that if and Ryan Day spoke to this, I think if it came down to it, I would trust these guys to make sure they don't take two. Dude, I can't remember the last time Ohio State took 2 straight L's at home. I just
It's been a very long time. I don't think it's been since maybe
2011.
before Cooper. No, you know what? It was the 2011 season, the Fickle season.
2011, yeah. So
Yeah, it's the Fickle season.
which I'm gonna put an asterisk on that. Put an asterisk on that season. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So it's there's a lot to play for. There's a
there's
lot to play for.
certainly a lot to play for. It's just whether or
Starting
not
with
these
pride.
guys. Yeah. Yeah. Eric says here Ohio State's going to get rolled if they play Tennessee. I disagree, Eric. I don't think Tennessee's that. I don't think they're an elite team. I think they're a pretty good team. They definitely deserve to make the playoff. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're a team that can hang with the big boys. And if Ohio State is right mentally, they are certainly one of the big boys. And that's going to be the other thing. How is this team going to respond from all the adversity and all of the, stuff that's been going on here in the media over the last week after that loss?
Right.
The post-game fight and everything. How are they going to respond to that? I give Ryan Day credit for actually rallying the troops in 2022 because that team played hard. They played Georgia really hard. They played pretty well. And they're going to need a similar sort of team effort this time around to make sure that they advance, in that first round, if they were to play Tennessee or whoever. If they mentally crater, and we're going to know within the first half if they mentally crater. If they mentally crater, it could get ugly. And like I said, Day's probably on his way out. But if he rallies troops like 2022, this team's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, Ron, I'll tell you a story. So my senior year of high school, our offensive coordinator, he came to us with a speech for the game, and we were playing Catholic Central. And our season was over at that point in time. We weren't that good that year, lost our quarterback early in the season. But he told me something. He said something to us that I've carried till this day. He said, 10% of life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you act or react to it. And that quote hits hard for that team, I think. Two of their goals have been eliminated from them: beating Michigan and playing for the Big Ten championship. Those two things have been ripped away from them. Yep. Okay, that sucks. That really sucks. But your season isn't over. You're not playing in some rinky-dink bowl game. You're not playing in some a bowl game that doesn't even maybe has some validity to it, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like last year, you're going to the playoffs. That's where you're going to have a chance to win a national championship. Funny that this is Ryan Day's second time having a chance at a national championship without winning the conference. Ohio State's third time in the last 10 years of doing that. So, man, it's all there for them. And so it's going to be really interesting to see where this team's mindset is, even more so where the coaches are.
Yeah.
Specifically talking about you, Ryan Day, and Chip Kelly.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it goes to the seniors. How do the seniors want to be remembered? Because right now they're remembered as losers. They're remembered as the only class in the last 20 years to go 0-4 against Michigan. That's what they're remembered as right now. They didn't win a significant game of consequence in their 4 years. Now, they've got a chance to change that. If they make this run, if they go through the CFP and make it to the national championship or win a national championship, their whole legacy changes. And they know that. And it's going to take Jack Sawyer. I think he's the real leader of the senior class. That's the kind of guy I want to get behind him. Lathan Ransom, guys, Emeka Egbuka, those three guys need to be the guys that step up and set the tone for how this team is going to play whenever that playoff game comes and whenever the next playoff game comes. If they win that, they need to be the guys that set the tone, because they can't take they can't let Ryan Day set the tone. Let me put it that way. If they let Ryan Day set the tone, sports starts.
No, I completely understand that and get that.
Yeah.
And look, Eric, this is what I'll say about Penn State and comparing them to Tennessee.
Penn State's good.
They're a good team. Tennessee is, but dude, I can look down Penn State's schedule right now. You won't see them losing to anyone like that's near Arkansas. You won't find it. At the end of the day, Penn State has one loss, and that one loss is to Ohio State. Man, like I just, yeah,
Penn
and I
State
think
takes
Penn
care.
State.
Penn State takes
Oh,
care of
go
bad
ahead.
teams. They only lose to Ohio State or Michigan.
Mhm.
Those are the two losses they have almost every year.
Exactly. I cannot say the same for Tennessee.
Yep.
They played some close games. Penn State has played some close games, but I think today, even with a lesser wide receiver unit, I trust Drew Allard more than I do Nico. I think they both have I think they're very similar teams, honestly. You know,
They are.
really good running back rooms, really good defenses, really awesome defensive lines. But no, I mean, Penn State takes care of business when they need to, except for when they play Ohio State.
And we're going to learn a lot more. We're going to learn a lot about Penn State also this weekend. If
Mm-hmm.
they actually beat Oregon, I would be shocked. But it would be a big step for that program and that fan base surrounding James Franklin. If he wins a Big Ten title by beating an undefeated Oregon team, all of a sudden Penn State becomes a real contender. And maybe that'll help Ohio State a little bit because then all of a sudden they come in as the underdogs in the Big Ten. You know, IU's going to get in, but really no one expects anything from IU. But if Oregon and Penn State are the, cock of the walk in the Big Ten, Ohio State might be able to slide in with a little bit more, a little bit more under the radar. Maybe that'll help them. I don't know. Take all the attention off that. But is there anything else you want to cover before we get out of here?
No, man, I'm all set.
All right.
Set.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us here for the Collins Show. We will be back on Monday again, same time on Monday. And we'll talk to you all guys then. So, Garrison, OH.
IO.